But every time I hear that, I just love her voice more each time. But I think looking back on this now, it all seems very obvious. I can assure you, going through the data, with mountains of data and transcribed papers and so on, we really thought, how are we ever going to make sense of this? Because it was very much a data-driven evaluation. And then, probably in the last 6 months or so, we hit on this idea of the cyclist, because Helen is a keen cyclist. And we all thought, actually, that's a really good metaphor. So I hope you enjoyed that. There's at least one cyclist nailed into that. So I'll just briefly go through the key points of what she said. Clearly, it's a journey with a starting point, but it's not a linear journey. Okay, you can think you're doing really well, and somebody leaves, and that you're back down. It's like snakes and ladders. These implementers, there was not one site where any of this happened without an enthusiast, usually one or two key champions who went far beyond the call of duty to try and get mindfulness embedded within their health service. And these are the kind of the sort of heroes who just keep going. Although, as we saw, at some point that has to fit with the needs of the service, the trust, or the board, or whatever. And if it doesn't, those single implementers just keep on going, and nothing much happens to scale. They just keep on doing what they're doing, but it never takes off. For it to take off, you have to have some kind of fit. I thought it was very, very interesting that for the vast majority of the projects, the implementers adapted MBCT to the needs of the service. MBCT does not fit an NHS model. People who are well in between disease bouts, we don't care about normally. They're back in the community. So taking people on where you can't measure at baseline a high level of depressive symptoms don't fit our systems. And people just adapted to that. They took people who had depression. They took people with a range of other conditions. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that was actually a very important way to make implementation happen. And it would only have happened in a few sites if they hadn't done that. I've got very mixed views on that, because much of what they were using it for is not evidence-based in the traditional sense. The supportive context, I mean, this was a struggle for just about everyone to get to the point where there was somebody who was willing to support this crazy idea. Well, it wasn't so crazy because it was in nice guidelines, but even then there's an awful lot of prejudice seems to be prejudice against mindfulness approaches. So the supportive context, these implementers and the folk around them who were keen used a whole range of strategies to engage the management and the high hegians. And if they didn't do that, they didn't really get anywhere. I remember speaking to a couple of women who were doing fantastic things down south. They were like sole implementers. These two were just doing it. They didn't want to speak to management. They didn't like management. They were scared of them. So they didn't get very far. And you could see that they were never going to get very far until they tried to step up to that, or they got somebody from management on their side. Because the other thing is that the more senior a person was, the louder they could shout to make it happen. The higher up the chain, as it were, with the less stress, no doubt. Top down, bottom up. That's the magic, getting both pedals working. Very hard to achieve, but when you get that, it's a pivot point, and things take off. And the need for training and supervision, and high quality training. And I thought it was interesting that Helen said that the few sites where they had really high quality training and supervision embedded were able to stick more rigidly to quality and to guidelines, i.e. they were more able to stick to the MBCT for the patient group intended. So that's the kind of that's the kind of journey I've done. I've done it as a straight line here, but it clearly isn't a straight line. And I think you've got a handout showing this. I'm not going to go through this, but this is putting it all together. So we'll have tea in a minute, but we'll have time for questions. The toolkit, okay, we were hoping it would be ready for today. It's being done by an external company because it's an online with an app and so on. And they are not unusually behind schedule, so I think it's going to be ready in the next month or so. What we'll do is, if we have all your email contacts, we'll let you know. We'll put a link on the Glasgow University website. So if you Google me or mindfulness Glasgow University, it will come up. And we hope that's going to be useful for those of you who are somewhere in this journey. So we can be flexible with time. We can have tea and coffee sooner, but if there's any questions or points, or for me or Harry, because so Harry has to leave at tea time, at coffee break. So if you've got any questions you wanted to ask him but you didn't, then